But anyway, we've got through the basics of when we started. We talk about innovation and technology. In '97 we decided to buy a new coach to sort of get ourselves a bit further up into the quality side of things. We knew we wanted to get into the tour side of things and charter. Seatbelts were becoming a bit of an issue with different groups. There was a lot of schools that were saying they wouldn't really do much, especially the primary schools. They wanted to make sure they had seatbelts. In the mid-90s, about 92, 93, 94, the coaches in Australia become a lot more stronger. They had the seatbelts, they had better anchorage, rollover capability was a lot better. And so we thought the best way for us to go forward was to buy one of those coaches. So we bought a 13.5 metre coach, 54 seats, toilet, about $420,000 worth. So in that point in time, about 97, that was a fairly big investment for us. So we got that. As I mentioned before, we were doing a lot of work for McCafferty, so it was good to be able to have a vehicle that was very similar to them. It was an Australian-built chassis, so it was built in Brisbane, bodied in Brisbane, and the seats were built in Brisbane, and it had American running gear, so it was the same as McCafferty's. We could do our runs to Sydney or Melbourne, Barcaldine, and know that the vehicle was similar to theirs. And if we needed anything to be done to it, we knew that we could call one of their suppliers, and they'd know how it all works. Apart from them running GM, we had a Cummins, and that was about the only difference. And it was a real coach too, you know, it had a crash gearbox, and you felt like you were driving something, whereas now you've got Allison automatics, and it's all very easy. Which is a bit of a sign of the times, I suppose. It's getting harder to get the drivers in those older vehicles, and the Allison is certainly smooth, and the guys can concentrate two hands on the wheel and do their thing. So we invested in that coach. We thought the seat belts would be a good thing. We could offer that to the schools. We thought we could do a premium price without going silly, but we thought it was well worth a few more dollars than an old banger. Trying to do the same thing, but a few of our competitors at the time, because we were only, that was about our fourth, we had a few more by then, 7 or 8, but a few of our larger competitors went and put some lap seat belts. This one had lap sash, and a few of the competitors just went and put lap belts in, so that sort of bit us a little bit, because they actually did that. It was much cheaper. You could probably go and do that at a rough stab in the dark, about 30 grand, I suppose, to do the lap. And so they come into the market with a few of them. So we have one, they come into the market with 4 lap belted vehicles and undercut the price at the same time, and said if you pay on the day or pay in advance, they'll knock $50 off the price. So that buggered us up for a while, but in the end, getting that coach was good. We actually went and done a few of the older coaches as well and put lap belts in those, really to sort of just meet demand and sort of meet the market a little bit. We weren't happy with it, and my Queensland Transport really let it happen. I'm not really sure, it was bloody crazy. So little kids in there, they couldn't do it up properly, so you hit the brakes, they'd slide out from underneath it anyway. So that was that. We were sort of cruising along there a bit. We knew, we were taking over other bus operators at that point in time. There was a couple there that had good runs, and they're all government subsidised, so they're good bread and butter and a good base to have them. We've still got a few, and Dalby Depot is purely and simply all government contracted school runs. Ipswich Depot is contracted to private schools, and we're picking up more and more charter work there as well. And they Ipswich were with another operator down there, but didn't really want to go ahead with the times as far as seatbelts and later model gear, and just give them a good, reliable service to know that those families could be guaranteed that their boys and girls would get to school, or daughters and sons would get to school on time and safely. So there was a few issues, and so that's been good. That got us 10 buses into Ipswich, and that's been sort of moving ahead pretty strong. So that new coach came in '97, not a lot longer after that, about '98 or so, we heard that Bechtel were going to build a power station out at Millmerran, and that's only 80-odd, 90 k's away from Toowoomba. So we went to all the seminars like you're doing now, and Bechtel would talk about what's going to happen and how they're going to do it. If you're interested in being a part of it, make sure you come, put your company profile in, put your card in, and do all that sort of stuff. So we did that for months, probably more, over 12 months, I suppose. Went to as many things as we could, and they said, well, you'll get called up at the time, you can put your bid in and see how you go. So anyway, that was all good, and then just out of the blue we heard, just from word of mouth, that they put the tenders out and we weren't part of that package. So I jumped in the car and I drove down to Millmerran, and just in the back blocks of Millmerran where they were building it was just a massive paddock, a few trees, and a little 6x3 donga there, and the project manager was sitting in there. And I just asked him whether or not the packages had gone out, and he said yes, they had quite a while ago. And so I had a bit of a whinge and carried on a little bit. And so he said, well, here's the package. If you take it away, you can have a crack at it, but it's got to be due in on Monday. That was Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning, and we had to have it down in Brisbane by 10 o'clock on the following Monday. So we went back, and we had a good accountant then. We've got the same guy, and he's been with us all the way through pretty much. He probably joined us, I suppose, still an external accountant, but again, talking about relationships, both Alan and Ian have commented on relationships, and all through here, it's all about relationships. So I got home with the package. Robert, who's our accountant, myself and Karen, we sat down and pretty much day and night from then until Sunday night, early Monday morning, we were working on the document. I jumped in the car Monday morning, we drove to Brisbane, put it in the box, and that was that. So there was a bit of waiting, I suppose. Any of you that deal with those sorts of projects, I suppose, know that there's a quiet time when you bloody wonder what's going on. And so that happened for a while. Then we got a phone call. They say they wanted to come out and have a look at the operation and have a look at the vehicles. For this particular one, because we were still, we didn't have a real lot of new coaches, we had that one and a few older ones. Bedfords were pretty much ruling the roost at that point in time. There's still, actually no Bedfords, but plenty of labels take their place. And so they come out to have a look, and they were doing, I think McCaffs were one of the contenders as well, and there was another mob from Dalby, and there was I think a bit of a consortium from Millmerran farmers and a mechanic and a few of those a bit keen to get into the job. So they came out and had a bit of a look. We seemed to have a good relationship with those guys. We showed them around the yard and we had a coffee, and I think they were trying to look at what they were going to get value for money. So we knew we could go and buy the buses that they wanted ideally, but we just threw them the option and we took them around. As I said, we had a lot of older buses in the yard, and they asked if we could bid on those sorts of buses. So we did that, and threw a few other options in there, and a bit like what Ian mentioned, you've just got to give them different ideas, I suppose, and it's not that it's an extraordinary thing doing busing, it's fairly basic really, but I think by just giving them a few options it was quite good. So anyway, time went by again, and they kept on coming back, and it's always good when they keep coming back, knocking on the door or giving you a call. And anyway, in the end we won the contract, so we were quite happy with that. I mean, not getting asked to bid in the first place, having a few days just to get it together, and then winning the contract was good. It turned out to be a good stepping stone for us. We had 14 buses, all up in value, that have been flat out making $100,000, I suppose, as far as their value. The contract was good, and for old Bedfords, it was originally a 6-kilometre run from Millmerran camp, where they all camped, out to the site, and then as they built the Commodore coal mine, they had to move it around, they had to duplicate the creek. So again, most of you will be familiar with all that, but it's just amazing what they do just to duplicate the creek. So pick it up from here and move it over there. So the road went around, it ended up then about 14 kilometres roughly by the time we got to site. And we never really had a breakdown. We might have had the odd blowout, and those old buses did well. So that was good. That finished around about 2002, and we thought that was pretty much going to be our experience with the project work. So we went back and just carried on with life. And it would have been not long after that, I suppose, 6 months or something like that, we got a phone call from the guy from Bechtel again. He was back in Houston, and he rang to see whether we'd be interested in bidding for the Darwin LNG job. And so at that point in time, I was fairly excited about that phone call. And so we said, I'll put you onto a lady, and she was an American lady, and she said, would you be interested in supplying, I won't give you the American accent today, would you be interested in supplying something like 40 or 50 61-seater buses for this LNG project in Darwin? So I just said yes straight away, without a great deal of thought about it. And anyway, she wanted it within a couple of months, so that was always going to be a challenge if that ever come off. But in the end, it was another one of those processes where where they want it quickly, but it took months and months to come in. I think that was about April or something like that when we got the phone call. They really wanted them by June, and it ended up being October. So we had time to build up for that. That was a bit of a jump though. It was another state or another territory. The buses were new, and they had to be at least air conditioned. There was no seatbelts at that point. So we had to get things organised pretty quick there. So there was a lot of getting the bid ready, the pricing, and then I suppose in the background, not knowing that we were going to get the job, we still had to bid for it, work out just what we had to do to move into the territory. Anyway, again, that we got the job, and again, it was a very short lead time to get buses actually mobilised. So we couldn't get up there. Initially, when we wanted to go and have a look at the site where it was and just to get a feeling for the place, we asked whether we could go and have a look, and she said, no, Tarzan's still swinging from the Barnes where the bus has got to go. And it was just right out in the mangroves. They had to build the road up, and it was a fairly different sort of an atmosphere we had to contend with. So in the end, they wanted the buses, so there was myself, brother, father, 2 or 3 of the guys from Millmerran Power Station. We moved up and moved into the caravan park for a few months and hired a couple of minibuses to get the job started. We got onto Hino. Again, one of those relationship things. We said we needed the buses ASAP. So they delivered 5 to Darwin for us. They just mobilised them one day and got them up before we'd even paid for them or really even signed a contract for Bechtel at that point. Still a few little bits and pieces that we had to finalise. And Brian with Hino, he just got 5 drivers and they just brought them up and drove them sort of all day and got them to us, and we got them all registered up there and had them ready for work. So with all of that, the whole Darwin climate was very different. You've got wet seasons and cyclones. You've got drivers that want to go and have a beer at lunchtime and then come back and drive in the afternoon. We had drivers turn up in the morning at 5 o'clock to do their run, and they'd turn up 3 times over the limit. We had to put a lot of policies and procedures into place with that. So we learned a lot from Millmerran about how crucial times are, because you're dealing with unions and anything that they can blame to call a strike or do something, they would do it. So we had a fair bit of experience from Millmerran, so we took that with us. But that just exploded with Darwin. So we had a collective agreement done up for us there, and we had to do then breathalyser testing and all those sorts of things. So at that point we could only do random, and I think the story on the site was random as well. So we did copycat a little bit of what they had with their site rules. Ideally, if we could have, we would have done mandatory, so everyone that came to work would have done a breath test, but it was a bit hard to implement it afterwards with some of the agreements and that we had in place, but it's a much different story now. Darwin was different. You've got accreditations you've got to deal with, and we had 34 buses in the end in Darwin, and 160 drivers went through the books to get the job done. So and they were all pretty much new buses, and like I say, they were air conditioned, but they weren't seatbelt equipped at that point in time. We did learn a lot from Darwin. So again, we thought we would stay in Darwin and wait for the second train to go up there, but that never did happen. So we brought quite a few of the vehicles back to Toowoomba and used them there. We sold off a lot of the old girls and farewelled some of those old Bedfords, and Queensland's never been real great for school bus subsidies, so we found that these projects were, subsidising the school buses. We were getting rid of the old girls and we were putting a lot of these newer ones in, so it was good, but it's only just been recently that Queensland Transport's actually pumped a few dollars into school buses in Queensland, and we've seen a much better bus now, which has been welcomed. Since then, we've enjoyed a good relationship with Bechtel. We've got the Yarwun job at the moment down in Gladstone. That should have ramped up to about 30 odd buses, but the GFC really affected things down there. I suppose in a way it scared the hell out of us to a degree, because our bank manager at the time, we were asking for some money for bus, for depots and all that sort of thing. And he said, "Oh, what if Rio goes belly up?" And we said, "Bloody Rio, nothing's ever going to happen there." And we were very cocky, and we give him a cert. We actually left him not long after that. But anyway, in the end, there was a bit of a hiccup. So I mean, you can think that you're as rock solid as you like, I suppose, but then that come along and they scaled back down, and we had to sell a couple of buses off. All built into the contract. We didn't lose anything, but you can imagine getting 18 months into a bus lease with a bus worth $350,000, and you get 18 months into a 4-year contract type thing, and you've got a hell of a penalty there. So they had to pay that penalty. In the end, they just put the buses on stand down until things picked up, and then they put them back in again and paid the stand down. So I never really apologised for our bank manager for that, but he was sort of somewhere close to being right. So so that's what happens there. So Gladstone's been going well. So when they dropped it down, but it went for longer. So instead of it having that massive big peak like a lot of these projects do, we went for longer. So it's now still going and probably should finish by about the end of May. They're very hard to deal with though, because they don't actually tell you when they're really going to finish or when their demode is. I mean, it would be nice if they did, because then you could wait for the next job to come. You could sort of move one bus to the next, and it just hasn't flowed as much as we would have liked it to this time, because since August 09, we've been dealing with the LNG busing in Gladstone. So we started doing the dealing there in August. We started November, December. We went over to Houston and we put that presentation to them. Hence the bloody welcome, the upside down under thing, and a bit corny, but and so we went all through all that, and we would have thought that we would have got the contract pretty quick, but that only again got signed in November last year. So it's a hell of a process, very costly, and I don't know whether we'd ever know just what it would have cost us to get to this point in time, but probably best we don't know, I suppose. One thing I do know is we bid for a job in Papua New Guinea last year or the year before, the year before, and we reckon that cost us probably about 30 grand, and it's probably 30 grand well spent that we didn't get that job, I think, because I don't know if any of you have been to Papua New Guinea, but it's a bit of a dive. You never know whether you're going to come out alive or in a box. But the first trip someone got shot, a diamond trader in the domestic terminal, and the trip after that we had the Highlanders Barney with the bloody someone else, and it was just full on. So I was pleased to get out of there, and I don't think I'll be back. But anyway, our accountant reckons he can get a few bucks out of that, because you're trying to, I don't know, export your services or whatever. There's something there that he's going for, so we might get 15 or 20 grand back from that. But anyway, with LNG we've got that, and I suppose getting back to Yarwun and the timing, we would have liked to have been able to bring the buses straight off Yarwun, put them onto LNG and go from there, but anyway, it hasn't quite worked that way. At the moment in Gladstone we've got about 65 buses down there, and once Yarwun finishes we'll just have to see. There's other contracts other than the Bechtel stuff, but it's all pretty much LNG related. So over the years we've got a hell of a lot of policies and procedures. We've had to make sure the quality assurance that we spoke about earlier was up to scratch, and it's something that it is a living document that we use. We've had to make sure that we follow all their policies and procedures as well. We've had, as you would have seen on the screen there, we've got the navman stuff, so now we can back ourselves up, or well, it can get us, I suppose, too, but we can at least see when the door's been open on a bus, when the handbrake's been turned off. We know they leave the stops on time. We can actually get that information sent to us by text or email, and if there's a drama with overspeeding, and it all goes back to the strike issues and that sort of stuff, I suppose. If they say the bus left 5 minutes early and they got left behind, it's a reason why they can cause a drama when they get to work. So this way we can back that up. If they say did the bus leave 5 minutes later, we can bring up that schedule and say that it closed the door at 1 minute past 5 when it should have left at 5 o'clock, and then you can give them the full speed report if someone whinges about speeding and all sorts of things. So So that's all been good. With Bechtel still now, we're out at South Walker Creek and Dornier coal mine. That all took off last year. So with Bechtel alone, it's not too bad, but when you add BMA, it's a whole different thing again. And again, there's probably a few of you here that deal with BMA, and it's certainly a whole different beast. So, with getting the vehicles mobilised with what you've got to do to the bus, they've got to go through an inspection system, and it takes us anything from 5 to 7 weeks to get a driver mobilised. And that's just going through inductions and medicals and all sorts of things for that. So there's a fair bit to do with all of that. So we've been able to update all the computer software. We've got VMS now. A bit like Ian mentioned before, you can. It's quite good to go on there. You can show them all your reports out of the vehicle maintenance system. That all ties into the coach manager with rostering, and for back in Toowoomba where we do all our tours and charters, we can put all that into one package now, and we can take bookings and do all that through that. Any reports they want, we can just give it to them. Our fleet maintenance manager now has to deal with all these depots, 5 or 6 depots, so he can send them all the work tickets. We can get all them back signed, and we feel quite comfortable if New South Wales Transport or Bechtel, VMA want to come and audit the books, that we can just lock them in a room with Robert, and he can show them everything they want to see, and it certainly takes a lot of load off. When we were trying to deal with all that ourselves, it was impossible. We're now looking at a ERP, and I had to write that down because I never remember it, but it's an enterprise resource planning system, so it's a new package for payroll and accounts. We're hoping that will save our girls some time and effort, and that's going to cost us something like $150,000. So again, it's money that just spins me out anyway. But we hope it'll sort of take us on from QuickBooks, which was an investment quite a few years ago. So where are we? The floods in 2010 certainly affected us, more so than the GFC, I think. Alan mentioned yesterday that the GFC wasn't just then, it's probably still going now to a degree, and certainly we live in or our business is in a two-speed economy with the mining and just the general charter back into Toowoomba and Dalby and Ipswich. So the mining going full on, and you've got to spend a lot of money to be up there with it. But certainly the travel side of things, and I think Australian tourism in general certainly has quietened down a little bit because they can go and travel overseas fairly cheap at the moment as well. So the floods really hit us hard. We had a Toowoomba to Brisbane service, and that got stuck in Brisbane for 4 days. When the roads opened, it was taking us probably 7 or 8 hours to get around through the gap to Brisbane. And I think they're still, they were still gun shy right into 2011. And one of our biggest dramas there was the floods, people not travelling, but then getting these contracts. So all of a sudden we found that we had a massive cash flow problem. And so we put a general manager in who, thank God, had a good lot of accounting background, and he took over a lot of that accounting stuff. A lot of it was taken out, was looked after by Robert in the early days. But having someone now on board that can look at all of that and look at our figures daily, there's nothing worse than when you get someone ringing up looking for money. You know you've got money coming in out here, your debtors or something terrible. But it's just taking that in. So all of a sudden you've got projects worth hundreds of thousands into the millions of dollars every month, and it's just not coming in quick enough because it's 40, 50 days. And then you get your, Repcos and your your Ingram, Ashdown, whatever, all ringing up looking for their money. So it puts a lot of stress on everyone. And so at least with that being looked after now, that the cash flow is sorted. The bank manager now is certainly very happy. And so between the bank manager and our finance company, we sort of spread the risk a little bit there with that. Our relationship with the guy that looked after our collector agreement, that's been probably one of the biggest things we'll have to do, is make sure we get that up and running and in place, because the Bechtels and BMAs are interested too much if you haven't got all that in place. So we've had to make sure that we've kept that relationship nice and solid, and he's been terrific for us. So any dramas we have there, we can usually get him on board, and if he's got to come to Gladstone for work, well then he comes and sees our guys, and we really try and make sure that that side of the business now is spot on with our letters to the people when they start, the inductions they get when they start. Sign it all and go through the Schedule A with them and make sure they know exactly what they're doing when they come. Has been a tremendous benefit to us. So from the 3 to the 155, it's been these sorts of events that have been good for us. I don't think you'll ever get to the right people as far as meeting up with the guy at Bechtel or Ling O'Rourke or John Holland that's going to be booking buses God knows where in the country, but it's going to these, it's networking with you people. It's just getting your name out there as much as possible. As both these guys I said before, Ian and Alan, that it's just doing a good job there, and you never know when that project manager is going to get a job on another project with another company. We're bidding for Darwin again now, God knows why. And that's because a guy from Bechtel moved on to another project, and they bring your name up. So that's worked out very well. So word of mouth for us has been terrific, but you still can't discount the value of these. The DD thing that we spoke about before, that was tremendous, just to get a few of the guys out of the office. Myself, my sister, general manager and a couple of the girls from in accounts and in the reception area, just to talk honestly about where they see us. And I guess you guys might put up the graph from DD where the contenders and the world class and all that sort of thing goes. We actually finished in the contenders section there, close up to the world class, so that was good. We'd like to now do that again with some of the drivers and some of the depot managers and see whether they give us the same response. I don't know. So it'll be interesting, I think, and we'd like to do that. I think it's a course that everyone should have a crack at and just see where you sit with it. So anyway, I think that's about it. Thank God we got through that session okay. And thanks for your patience.